Welcome to the Carr Brothers with Jeff, Jack, and Jody Carr. They talk about current events, politics, community, and business. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello there. Welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 168. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank everyone for tuning in on CHCO TV, on our YouTube channel, and on Facebook, and on our podcast. And we're very, very happy to have a long-time serving MLA, colleague of ours, of course, yes, on the opposite side of the legislature, but still a mutual understanding of doing what we can for our constituents. And Shawn Graham was the Premier from 2006 to 2010, our 31st Premier here in New Brunswick, and we're very pleased to have you on our show and join us, and so we can catch up and see what's new and reflect a little bit as well.
Well, it's great to be here with the Carr Brothers. I sort of feel like I'm a Montreal Canadiens hockey game looking across that sea of blue with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it's great to be here. And look, that was the great thing about politics with all of us. We were best of friends throughout the whole thing, even though we were on the opposite sides of the fence politically. So looking forward to the conversation.
Well, very pleased to have you. And Jode, anytime it's a little tougher sometimes to get in there when you're on Zoom, but feel free just to speak up. I'm sure you will anyway, but...
Well, I'll raise my hand very politely like I always did in the legislature, Shawn.
Yes, indeed, my friend.
And you guys actually got elected fairly close. Shawn was elected in 1998, and then Jode, of course, 1999. And Jode, your dad was a longtime MLA, and Alan Graham, and he was actually, how'd that go, Jody? He was the youngest elected MLA up until when Kirk McDonald got elected, I believe.
Exactly. And, an interesting fact, though, my dad was elected in 1967, a year before I was born, and he and Gerald Clavette are the last two living members of Louis J. Robichaud's government in New Brunswick.
Really?
Wow. He served under Louis J. Robichaud.
Huh. Wow. And how's your dad doing?
He's doing great.
Oh, good.
Still working at the farm, keeping all the grain boys, working in the hay fields and doing all the other fun stuff. So maybe we'll get the Carr Brothers to come down and help the grain boys do some farming.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. And
I'll drive the tractor.
I'll bring the sandwiches. So what are you doing? What are you doing these days to keep busy? And we're followers on LinkedIn, so I see some of it, but what's some of the things that are keeping you busy right now?
Well, Jack, I have to say, first off, served 15 years in public office, went through 5 elections, and I loved every single minute of it. But I'm one of those individuals, when you finish something, that chapter of my life has ended, I close that book and start a new chapter in a new book, and I am enjoying life after public office, I have to say. I own some companies. I sit on some corporate boards. I do a lot of volunteer activities with 2 organizations now. I'm very disciplined on not spreading myself too thin, because whatever I commit to 110%. But I have to say that a lot of travel in my work. I do still a lot of work in Asia, but it's always great to be home, and I'm looking forward to the summer to start.
Well, that's great. And so what are the 2 volunteer boards that you're part of?
So when I was in university, I went to my first Ducks Unlimited dinner in Kent County, and I became a supporter of Ducks Unlimited. I love hunting, I love fishing, I love outdoors, and Ducks Unlimited has a great group of volunteers in New Brunswick. So I served at the provincial level for a number of years as a volunteer, and then went into public office. And when I left public office, the president of Ducks Unlimited Canada at the time was Mac Dunfield from New Brunswick, and he called me up and said, "Shawn, we'd like you to serve on our board if you'd be interested." And I just finished 15 years of public office. I said, "Well, let me think about it." And Mac, past president of the Road Builders, he's pretty persuasive, so he convinced me to join, and I'm happy to say that, I joined in 2011, and this June I'll become president of Ducks Unlimited Canada, following in the footsteps of Arthur Irvin, who was past president, Mac Dunfield, who was past president, Kevin Harris. So New Brunswick has had a long history of leadership with the organization, and we're Canada's largest conservation company. And, this year's budget's $120 million, and we have over 500 employees, and we're boots on the ground, helping conserve wetlands. And you'll appreciate this, being former Minister of Environment. When I was in public office, they came to me and said, "We've got a problem," because Ducks Unlimited actually maintains more water infrastructure, fish passage waterways in Atlantic Canada than any organization. We have over 200 dams that we maintain. and there was a cost in maintaining that infrastructure. So I, as Premier, told my Minister of Environment, or through the Regional Development Corporation at that time, we'll put in $1 million to help maintain that infrastructure. And then the province of Nova Scotia and PEI came on board because I convinced my colleagues. We put in, so that totaled $3 million. Ducks Unlimited matched that $3 million, and then the federal government came in with another $3 million. So that $9 million fund we've spent $11 million out of that fund, and there's still $13 million left in the fund today as a heritage project to maintain all those fish passageways, et cetera, across Atlantic Canada.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of work to be done. So that's the strength of nonprofit organizations such as DU, that it's the volunteers that matter, and the employees that we have that really make a difference.
Oh, that's great. And what's the other one that you're on?
So I got outside of my comfort zone a little bit on this one.
Yeah.
When I was in public office, I was approached by Ken McLeod to fund an after-school music program called Sistema, and it's a beautiful program. We were the first of its kind to give kids access to music that would never have that opportunity, and it's since blossomed out across Canada. But there's a foundation out of Toronto called the Glenn Gould Foundation. It's a national organization. Kim Campbell's our former Prime Minister's our former chair. Beverly McLaughlin, the former Chief Justice, sits on the board. Okay. So I was asked to represent Atlantic Canada, and I have to tell you, arts and culture, well, I enjoyed immensely. It's not my area of expertise, right. I don't profess to be, but it's been a new learning curve for me. And this weekend, actually in Toronto, Elton John is the upcoming laureate of winning the Glenn Gould Prize. And there's going to be a big gala event with all Canadian artists, as he's hand-selected, that's going to be showcasing his contribution to arts and culture in Canada.
And he'll be there as well.
Yes, he will be.
Oh, man, that's
the Rocket Man.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's amazing. That's great. So those are two great organizations, of course, with the environment and arts and culture. So, well, you must be very fulfilling, like most people, when they say they volunteer, and it's fulfilling and help other organizations.
I treat every day as a learning day.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed to have great friends and great family. But it's pretty nice when I get home to Kent County. I know you guys are from the Fredericton region here, you
yes.
gentlemen. But for me, home is Kent County. And when I get over there, we have a lot of fun together, still hunting and fishing and canoeing and doing a lot of outdoor activities. And I have to say that we are blessed to live in this province. We really are. The day our ancestors settled in New Brunswick, all of us that are here, we won the lotto because we have such a great abundance of space and so few people to share it amongst.
Yep. Yeah, it is the.
I take this over downtown Toronto any day.
Well, it's the best. It really is.
It really is.
Joe, did you want to jump in there? Say hi.
Yeah, really. It just goes to show, we don't always get to see the ordinary people, what our former Premier, Shawn Graham, does. And I think what it reminds me is the first impression I got of him in the legislature. He was elected a few years before me, I believe, and then I got elected in 1999. And one thing I learned from you, Shawn, was you never sat still, or you never sat quiet doing very little. You were always busy doing something. And one thing I always admired was you had these stack of letters you kept signing on your desk, and you'd sign all these letters and make notes and sign these letters. And I was intrigued by that and found out from you that you were writing letters to your constituents or to people contacting you from your critic role. But that I learned very early on from you is like, stay busy, keep being productive, do things, listen, be involved, be engaged. But you were very much connected to the people that contacted you. So I was quite impressed by that. And there's no difference today. You're busy. Energizer Bunny. Where does it all come from? I don't know. But
well, Jody, I appreciate you saying that, because you have to remember when we were there in 1999. I don't want to date us, but that was before the age of social media and the internet, and for politics matters. I'm speaking to three veterans as well. But all politics is local. Democracy is a fragile beast. We are lucky to live in the structure of governance that we have, where people get to choose their representatives. But people also want to know that their representatives have followed up on their issues. So Jody, I did write a lot of letters because you can tell someone, yes, I made a call, but if you actually took the time to write the letter on their behalf and copy them on it, then they saw that you actually did follow up on their issue. You might not, unfortunately, when you're an elected official, 9 times out of 10, you're the last person. When they're turning to you, you're the last resort, and it's pretty tough to solve the problems. Mm-hmm. But if you make the effort, and anyone who runs for public office today, regardless of political stripe, I mean, I think it's very important to always make sure that people know that you followed up on their issue.
Well, I used your model as well,
okay.
When particularly in opposition, but then I, as in government as well, I wasn't a cabinet minister, but I used your model. I would meet it with a constituent and write a letter to the minister, CC the constituent, and then it's on record. But it was your specific model on that process, because I didn't think about writing the minister and then CC and the constituent, or each that way. And that model was a great model. Well, that it worked for me, and the constituents then know it worked because
maybe it worked. They knew I took detriment. You guys kept getting reelected all the time.
But it worked because they recognized that the issue was valued and validated. So that was good.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Yep. Did a lot too. And it's just people, they just want to know that you're working at their issue. 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not 9, but 7 or 8, maybe you were not successful in getting what they needed done, but you're working at it, and they knew about it. So by the time I came along in the legislature, everything was on.
I feel for you.
Right? So you can see a lot easier than a written letter with a stamp on an envelope, but
the challenge
just moves quicker.
The challenge with
the volume.
The today, it's not just the volume. It's everyone is now looking for an instantaneous decision.
Right.
You just don't have time to take that sober second thought. Like, you believe it or not, when I was premier, I didn't have a cell phone.
Oh, really? Wow.
Well, sorry, I had a flip phone, but I didn't text.
BlackBerry, maybe.
No, I didn't even have BlackBerry.
Oh, yeah?
I had because if I wanted to get something done, I called people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had a whole, poor Sherry Shannon, my assistant, she had all the phone numbers. I said, give me the phone number. We're going to call this person. But you couldn't do that now. I mean, but I lived in a period of time where, as premier, that if I wanted to, I'd call my deputy, I'd call the MLA, or I'd call the road commissioner directly and say, look, what are we doing here? And for me, it kept me connected. I found that was a lot more personal today than we have. Than you can put something out and you think it's done and you forget about it and it's gone. Yep. But when you call someone, it makes a difference.
It sure does.
And really, a lot harder to say no to someone if you're on the phone and they hear your voice, but easier to sort of ignore a text and email. Now, from a premier, I guess you can't really ignore a text or an email, but when you're making that phone call, then
but the volume is so much heavier, though. It's easy to miss. It's easy to miss those things. Yeah. Like I just look at my short time around cabinet and around premier's offices over the last 10 years. I mean, they've got a room full of people that are monitoring correspondence and making sure it goes in the right direction. It's coming from every different direction. It's easy to miss those things, but when you're getting it physically in your hand, a letter or a phone call, you can manage it a little better. Yeah. It's never always perfect, but you can manage it a little better.
But just coming back to the area of serving your local constituents, you each had the opportunity to serve in government, and your best day in opposition never beats your worst day in government.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I remember our first cabinet meeting we had, so I'd bring in every week we'd have cabinet, all the ministers, but every second week I'd bring in all my deputies. And I'd sit down with all the deputies and I'd go through all the files that I was tracking. But our first meeting with the deputies, I went around to every deputy and I said, tell me one thing in your department that may have been overlooked inadvertently, that it could go back, that needs to be changed. And each of the deputies, gave me some, some were big, some were small. But for the department at that time of Family Community Services, I remember the deputy put up her hands and she said, Mr. Premier, if you're on income assistance in this province, the policy has always been if you have a cavity, the policy is we extract the tooth. I said, what? Mm-hmm. I said, you're a single mom, you're on income assistance, and you've got a cavity, we're going to extract your front tooth, your molar. And she goes, unfortunately, that's a policy, and it's just never caught the attention of government. And I'm not laying blame on this whatsoever. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just, things get overlooked, just what it was. It just became normalized. So I said, how much is it going to cost to fix this? And I think the amount at that time was $2.5 million. I said, look, it's done today. We'll build it into supplementary estimates. Just go out and change the policy. But a year later, I got a letter from the Social Workers Association of New Brunswick. It was the nicest letter. I mean, this is small things that make a difference when you're Premier, but it said, Mr. Premier, this year you saved 3,000 teeth in the province of New Brunswick.
Wow.
So I mean, that's where, you get a chance to change people's lives for the better. And that's when I'm coming back to, you had the opportunity to serve, and you really did have an impact on people's lives here. And, so did I. And I guess for those who want to serve in the future, please step up. And we're getting ready for a big round of municipal elections, so that'll be get out to vote this week.
Votes this Monday.
And then we're just about ready to break for our this segment already.
Yeah, we got a few more
minutes.
minutes.
Got a couple minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. What's the other you mentioned earlier about when you first became Premier, or part of that process earlier on, is you changed the Department of Social Development?
Oh, well, that was the same Department of Family and Community Services. We brought that into the Department of Social Development, and then we started the Poverty Reduction Initiative.
Yes.
And that's when I brought my successor, David Allward. He sat off the table. I brought in the opposition. That was
Madeline Dubé.
That's right. We brought all stakeholders to the table, and it was a public engagement process where we were putting the politics aside, and we were working for a way to help relieve poverty in the province of New Brunswick through a stakeholder group that incorporated the nonprofits, the business sector, all government officials, and it made some big inroads. And I know today, Minister Cindy Miles, she's got a tough department with a lot of big issues to challenge, and that's
20 years later, almost.
Yep. So
Believe it or not.
I feel for her and her staff, because we've just seen a big influx of population growth in the province, but with that comes a whole range of new challenges with new families moving here, that you have to make the resources available to help service them. So it's not an easy time today to be in government. No. Whether you're provincial, federal, or municipal.
Surely not. But you're happy with that change?
Yeah.
Bringing in social development. It stood the test of time?
Yeah, and our government tried to make some pretty big changes on a number of fronts. And we went from 8 regional health authorities down to 2, and that saved us $60 million overnight by taking away some of the administration duplication. You know what we did with that? We took that $60 million and we created Ambulance New Brunswick, because we didn't have a standardized ambulance system in the province at the time, and I felt that was totally unacceptable, that you're living in rural New Brunswick and you aren't getting the same service if you're having a heart attack for someone living in an urban center. So we created a standardized system for the ambulance side. Some of the other big changes that we put through that that I'm proud of today, that have stood the test of time. If we look at the bringing in the private sector to help deliver nursing home care, Shannix is a big player now. Built a number of nursing homes where we match the per diem rate, but we had to change the legislation at that time, and that opened up a whole range of nursing home beds that wouldn't have been available, that we were able to build quicker through the private sector than going through the normal public process. Yeah. So there's there are a lot of changes, and we'll probably get into the discussion around MB Power.
Yes, we should. Since you brought it up.
We should do that.
We will over the next segment or two. We'll get into that and have a lot of things have changed since that time, 2010, I would say, 2009-10.
A lot of water through the dam.
A lot of water through the dam, yeah. So when we come back, we may just cover a discussion on MB Power. Please return after these messages.
Hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 168. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the 3 Carr Brothers on location from Zoom. And we're really happy to have Shawn Graham, former Premier, on the Carr Brothers.
Yes.
Welcome, Shawn.
Thanks, Jody. I miss that you and I were old seatmates in the legislature on opposite sides, mind you. You were a minister at that time, and I was in opposition, but we had a lot of fun together back then, my friend.
We really did, and we've always kept it above the belt, I guess, on the floor of the legislature, and that maintained, I guess, our friendship outside of the legislature and politics afterwards. And you're living proof there is life after politics, and you're making meaningful of it every chance you get. So it's good to have you on.
Thanks.
And we've had a number of former premiers on the show, and it's just been a real interesting for us as former elected members as well, just to catch up with them, listening to some funny stories that they tell, some legacy stories, what they're doing now. We've had Bernard Lord on and David Allward.
No, not yet.
We haven't
had David on yet.
Frank McKenna.
Yep.
Had Frank on.
That was a great show.
Yeah, so it's been good, just catching up with some of the farmers. So,
Jode, what do you have for some reflection on your time, because you served the longest with Shawn in the legislature? Your reflection of your time back in those days and together.
Well, there's so many. A few in particular. One is when he was leader of the opposition. What I was always impressed with is it didn't look like it. I mean, maybe you were nervous on the inside, but you just said that earlier, that you pick up the phone and call somebody and call whoever, and it didn't really matter, but you just took on the issues and commanded. You turned the election you almost won the election. Was it in 2003? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought up the issue of gas tax and gas prices, and you were relentless. And
insurance.
You made that.
Insurance.
You made that. Insurance. Maybe it was insurance or yeah. And you made it an issue, and it just took Bernard Lord. I think he made one kind of comment that he said something like, everyone knows the government can't control, and you jumped on it, but it was a pocketbook issue for people, and I just remember how you kept at that in the legislature. I was impressed.
Well, yeah, you have to remember that when I was in opposition, the Liberal Party was at its lowest point in its history. We were down to 7 seats.
That was dismal.
And
for the Liberal Party.
For the Liberal Party. Mm-hmm. Great for Conservative. but with 7 seats, everyone knew that they were going to be, whoever the next leader was probably going to be the sacrificial lamb. So the people who should have stepped up to run didn't. So then all of a sudden, everyone turned to me and started asking if I was going to run. And I was supporting some other candidates at that time. And I said, I'm not really interested. And then finally there was enough people that said, look, we need you to step up. And I said, you know what? Because I'm a competitor. I used to run competitively. I went represented New Brunswick in the Canada Games in '85 in St. John in track and field. And so I have a pretty strong competitive streak. So I was the last one into the leadership race in 2002. At that time, a cabinet minister, Paul Duffy, under Frank McKenna's government, was running, and Jack McDougall, and I was able to, even though I was last in, won the leadership race. But then we only had a year to prepare for the election. And yeah, Jody, you do remember that became a big issue at that time, the automobile insurance race, because I was hearing it everywhere I went. People were saying that they were being put into what's called the Facilities Association at that time. So their rates were, skyrocketing through the roof, and there's no way someone can have a bill of $500 one year and a bill of $2,000 next year. So we were able to make that one of the issues. Actually, the polling data at the time showed, ironically, that if we had kept on that issue in the last week of the campaign, we probably would have had the opportunity to keep that momentum going, but we stalled because we switched to the healthcare file. And New Brunswickers today, everyone can talk about healthcare, but it's pretty tough to fix. So, but we went from 7 seats to 26 seats, and the one seat we lost to was Brenda Fowley's seat in Kennebecasis. I think it was 8 or 9 votes, and that would have gave us the balance of power to be able to form government. So that's why every vote does count. But I took that opportunity then to sit in opposition for another 3 years. Bernard Lord called the election a year early, if you remember, in 2010. And then we went on to form government. And then we were elected on a platform of transformational change. Our goal was to, match Alberta's tax rates, or come close to matching Alberta's tax rates, and matching Quebec's hydro rates, so that we could become a beacon for investment and really drive the economy, and then bring people back home. So it's easy to lower taxes. I mean, we looked at flattening the taxes. We went from 4 brackets on personal income tax down to 2, which put more money back into people's pockets. But the big file was MB Power. And you have to remember, in 2009, that was at the height of the economic recession.
That's right.
And we were losing a lot of heavy industry in the province. If you look at Dalhousie, the newsprint mill had closed down. I had to go up and meet in front of 1,000 people in that community and say, look, we've got to try to find a way to diversify the economy. But we lost the battle because we have uncompetitive energy rates, and newsprint is going. It's the way of the dinosaur now because everyone's using electronic media. We lost UPM Committee, the specialty coated mill on the Miramichi. I had to meet with that community and face head on the reality that specialty coated print no one was buying glossy magazines anymore.
Nope.
And then Weyerhaeuser shut down the OSB mill. So I knew that we had to do something transformational. Now you have to remember, I talked about the great 2003 election, but when we won in 2010, we didn't win the popular vote.
2006.
Or sorry, we won in 2006. Sorry, correct. We didn't win the popular vote.
That's right.
So not winning the popular vote in 2006, I knew it was going to be extremely hard for us to get reelected in 2010.
Right.
Because every government goes down in their second mandate. Frank McKenna saw that when the Core Party coming forward. Bernard Lord saw that on the automobile issue that we were able to capitalize on in 2003. So I knew that the 2010 election was going to be tough. So I said, you know what, we're just going to try to do what's needed for the long-term fiscal responsibility of this province, and that's trying to transform MB Power and trying to get that $5 billion worth of debt off the books, because the debt of the province is separate from the debt of MB Power. And we also knew that Mactaquac Dam was going to increase the debt of the utility. At that time, they were projecting, it was going to increase by $2 billion. Now, that project has gone to $9 billion. And that's climbing. A big decision that government's going to have to make, and MB Power, on what to do with that infrastructure. It's almost cheaper, I'd say, now to build a new dam and figure out how to decommission the old one. But it's a big challenge. So we made the strategic decision, and it cost us an election, but to look at offloading that responsibility to Quebec. And we can dovetail into that discussion if you want, how it came about. So
your intent really was to have a long-term benefit of the province for New Brunswick. And like you said, even without that issue, just based on the statistics and the previous elections and the track record, that a first-term government has a hard time maintaining.
Governments are born to die.
They're born, You lose popular vote just on the simple fact that you're in government. So, did you go in with that decision with a strong feeling that it would be tough to win the election anyway, and let's sort of put the
you always want to win.
Yes, of course.
And our team, we put up a strong effort, but we also knew that we had to do, we weren't there for self-preservation.
Right.
So we had an opportunity. It was a strategic point in time. Premier Charest had just formed a majority government in Quebec. He was at the beginning of his election mandate, and I, unfortunately, was at the end of our mandate with our team. Right. But Premier Charest had an agenda. He wanted to create a national hydro company with Hydro-Quebec. He wanted to, rather than going to negotiate in the U.S. on power rates as a Quebec company, he wanted to say it was a Canadian company because he was a very strong nationalist and federalist. So there was an opportune time where it could be a win-win, and that's where we knew if we could mirror Quebec's hydro rates, which are the cheapest rates today in North America. They are still the cheapest rates in North America. Hydropower is your cheapest power. And the beauty of the deal was going to be that we would be able to sell our cheap power in the spring of the year when the Mactaquac Dam has a surplus of power, because the Americans haven't turned on their heaters yet, the air conditioners yet, and they've just turned off their heaters. So we're selling our power at the worst time. So we were going to take that surplus power, put it into Quebec, allow them to grow their hydro reservoirs, and then we would get that cheap power in the winter months. So it was a marriage of generation together that would allow us a cheaper form of power. The other challenge I had at the time is that, MB Power kept coming back to me and saying, we need to raise rates. And I knew that New Brunswickers were stretched already on power rates because you heard it everywhere you went. And we had to try to find a solution. And that was the best solution that presented itself at the time.
So what do you think, what would have you done differently, or what went wrong with this?
Oh, the communications definitely could have been better. Yeah. It's like telling everyone
a lot, most issues.
Exactly. But it was like telling everyone I had an old car. I've got this clunker of a car. I'm going to go out and tell everyone how bad it is, and then I'm going to try to negotiate the best price. Yeah. So I didn't have that luxury that, we couldn't go out and explain how bad the utility was marred, because we had Colson Cove, which had no fuel source because it was still burning Bunker C. It didn't have oil emulsion. We had Point LaPro that was in a refurbishment that was a year overrun already, and it was going to cost $1 billion for replacement power in the deferral account. And even Prime Minister Harper was frustrated because you have to remember New Brunswick was the first to build a nuclear reactor, a CANDU 6 reactor, so that meant we were the first to refurbish a CANDU 6 reactor. Yep. And the irony is that we started the process here with AECL in Canada, in New Brunswick, and they learned on how to tube the calandrial tubes here, and Wolsong Korea finished their refurbishment a year before we finished ours, even though we started a year earlier, because they learned the process. But we never got the benefit, and I think there can be a case be made today to the federal government, similar to what Newfoundland made on Muskrat Falls, that with that exorbitant debt that's been carrying now, there has to be a way to transfer that debt from NB Power's books to the federal balance sheet, which gives us an opportunity then to maybe find some rate relief going forward.
Right.
So, as you
you
said,
think there's a case there for
I
that?
think there's a strong
you're right.
case.
We were kind of the lab rat, I guess, as you could say, and it costs a lot of people politically, and it still gets brought up in the legislature over time and things like that. So, Joe?
I'm glad I'm glad, Shawn, you brought up, or you talked about a bit about the behind the scenes of the problem we see in politics. And I always tell people about NB Power. It was a problem the government was solving that the people didn't fully realize was a problem. And so but you were constrained by the marketability of NB Power. If you went out and talked how bad it was, then who would want to buy it? So I mean, so it is interesting to hear that perspective, and usually it is with the right intentions. But I appreciate that background.
Yeah, no, it was communications wise and hindsight. I mean, that was just at the forefront too of social media. I remember one of my cabinet ministers came to me and said, "I just opened a Twitter account. I'm the first elected official in Canada." I said, "What the heck is Twitter?"
Right, I know.
And then Facebook was taking off at that time, and we were caught flat-footed on that. We weren't able to respond. We went on the defensive quick, and then Danny Williams, the Premier of Newfoundland, came in and worked very hard actively to create an anti-Quebec sentiment because he wanted to kill our project to get his project through with Muskrat Falls. So that was, so we were getting hit on all sides.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We're going to come back and talk more about this. It's quite a topic, of course, that to reflect on and to talk about. And we've got our Premier, 31st Premier of New Brunswick, Shawn Graham, joining us here on the Carr Brothers Show, and we'll be back right after this. Well, hello there. Welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 168. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers, and what a great opportunity to hear from a former Premier, Shawn Graham, who was Premier from 2006 to 2010 and served 15 years in the legislature. Prior to that, had an extensive political career as well through his father, Alan Graham, longtime MLA. And Shawn, it's just a great pleasure to have you here with us tonight.
Great to be here, Jody.
One thing, we were talking at different times about the legislature, of course, where you and I served together during those years. And you were Premier, and I don't know if you remember, but what was always very important, and I'm not sure if that was because, and maybe you can talk about that, but you were, you were around the legislature. I suppose, do you ever get people that ask you what was it like to be the child of a politician?
Yeah.
I know when my daughters are asked that, they say, well, we don't know any different. We were a politician's daughter, like for the whole time they were born, like the whole time they were born. And you talked about your dad getting elected before you were born. So basically it was almost all you knew. So I don't know if you could relate to that, but one thing, I don't know if you remember, but on the floor of the legislature, after one of your budgets, I'm in opposition, and my wife, Krista, who now serves as CEO of the National Organization of Education Canada, at the time she was provincial executive director. A couple things that jog my memories when you talked about children and social development, politics being set aside because of helping people. And Krista's organization, she's been passionate about helping people with intellectual disabilities, as you know. Yeah. And after this one budget, there were 2 cabinet ministers on the floor of the legislature, and they offside a little bit. They made chirps at me. Something about, I can't quite remember, something about Krista losing her job out of the budget, but they were incorrect. They didn't quite know it, but it certainly didn't sit well with what they were chirping at me about, and I was pretty upset. And that came directly to you almost immediately. Your staff made sure, and you addressed it with your caucus and with those ministers, and it's something Krista and I always remember. Because you would say, families are off limits, let's stay again above the belt. And it's something I always remembered about your integrity around that. And I'm not sure if you remember that or not, but you've always said families were off limits. So do you have any reflection on any of that? Or?
Yeah. Serving.
You don't remember.
Well, no, I do remember. Actually, I do remember, because I remember giving the cabinet ministers a bit of a tongue lash and saying, look, we're all here. We're equals. We're here to serve. And just because you're serving doesn't mean their partner is serving, or their family is serving. And I'll use an analogy that, I'll share that one in a second. But what I can say about that, Jody, is, I do remember that personally. And I do remember that, I always said that, you come into this job, you don't make it personal. You can debate policy. I remember telling my cabinet the first day I met them, I sat them around and I said, I will forgive, a political mistake if you make a mistake. Yeah. But if you make a moral mistake, I will not forgive that, and we will have to deal with it. And I also said, you're here to serve. You debate the policy. You don't debate the person. Yeah. And I tried to live by that motto.
And I don't just interrupt, but I don't know if you remember, but within about 2 or 3 weeks from that moment, you personally made sure, or worked with the government departments, but you expanded the disability support program, the individualized support program across the province. And that, I believe, was another legacy that your government made sure happened for people with disabilities in our communities. That's still there today, that program, and it's very, very important. So
I appreciate your comments.
Wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good memory.
It was good, and like you said, just personal is off limits. Yeah. Keep it about policy. The party's promises, broken promises, whatever. But and I think that obviously sets the tone. A leader sets the tone, and then you did that very well of not making it.
I had some pretty good mentors too, because I'll come back to share with you. At the height of the NB Power debate, we'll close that one up. But I remember I got a call from former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, and he, in his old gruff voice, he said, "Sean," he said, "when they throw the poop at you," he said, "don't touch it." He said, "let it dry and fall off." He goes, "when you try to clean it, it gets all messy."
That's good advice. Wow.
So that, there's an analogy in that in public office. You're going to get a lot of stuff thrown at you. Yeah. But you can't take it personally. You can't, and what may not seem like a big issue to you is a huge issue for someone else, and you always have to remember that. But, speaking of good mentors, the day I got elected, we lost in 2010. The day after, I got a call from Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, and I remember it was the Prime Minister's switchboard. They said, Prime Minister's switchboard calling. I always said Prime Minister Harper's calling, and said, no, it's Prime Minister Mulroney. And he got me on the phone. He said, Sean, you got to make a decision now. If you're young, do you want to reoffer again? I said, no, I have 15 years as an officer. So if you're out of public office, you're done. You got to turn the page and focus on your business and what you want to do. And I said, perfect. So that's why you haven't seen me much in the public eye, since I get called a lot for media interviews, but I did this out of friendship with everyone here today, because I've seen what you contribute. But I'm not here to chirp from the sidelines or provide secondary comment. You notice I haven't commented on any government policies today. I never commented on anything under the Alward government's policies. I never commented under the Higgs policies, because that's what former premiers should do, is give that level of respect to set aside, and let the governor of the day govern. But Brian Mulroney called me up 3 months later to follow up and to see where I was at. So that always struck with me too, that, that those individuals who served at a much higher level would have that time to call and keep it personal
and care about it.
Yeah.
Well, going back to your comment about not commenting on previous governments, I think we just know, as the three of us, not to ask you about what do you think about Higgs doing this or Susan Holt doing that or Brian Gallant, because we just. Nobody's done your job. There's very few people that have been.
We're going to get a political answer.
Right. Well, we are maybe, but still, we just know. We don't ask.
No, and I appreciate that. That's why I knew the show was going to be fun today. It was going to be more reminiscent,
lighthearted and reminisce. I didn't mean a political answer. I meant
a non-answer.
Kind of a non-answer.
Not comment.
Well, there's a reason why.
But the other former
the reason why they call it question period. It's not called answer period.
Right. Exactly. And we've gone over that here before too.
Yeah.
But the other premiers that have been on here with us, former premiers, they don't comment on past governments and future governments. They just don't. I mean, there's a small group of people that have held your office, and you all know how trying it can be at times. So don't throw stones, I guess, is the thing.
What I want to know, I brought back a little memory that was meaningful to me. But Shawn, you must have some memories from the floor of the legislature, some funny ones or some joyful ones. What stands out?
Number one, the legislature's changed today. Unfortunately, I used to love it when you went in and the gallery was full. And the press gallery would sit in the box out front.
And that was full.
And you always had an audience, so you could feed off of that audience.
Especially, Shawn, especially when you were in opposition and you brought the audience up to the gallery.
Yeah, you brought the audience with you.
Well, it is the people's house. You could invite them in.
That's right. We've all done it.
Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
No, but I feel that's changed now. Like, I used to love going down to the cafeteria after a big ruckus debate, and you'd order dinner and sit down with the person you were arguing with, and you start jibbing each other and but it was fun natured.
Right.
I do miss that. I really sincerely do miss that. Because you are, at that time there was 55 of us in the legislature, so there's 55 individuals that you're with a lot of time in a small room. I mean, I remember one time we were in opposition and we were debating a budget item, and Norm Betts and I, he was Minister of Finance, who are the best of friends now, but Norm and I got sparring on something, and we ended up keeping the legislature open all night. I don't know if you remember that, because he wouldn't close the estimates until we were done. So I said, I'm ready to go all night. And then poor Elizabeth, she got caught off guard because she wasn't ready for the debate. So she, I said, we're in for a penny, we're in for a pound, we're staying all night now, Elizabeth. I think she got the phone book out at about 4:00 in the morning and started reading numbers on the phone book. And poor Norm started rolling his eyes, but the cameras were off, and it was lighthearted fun. But ultimately, we've seen a transformation now in the legislative body, and we're seeing more school children coming up and seeing how the legislature functions. But I think because of social media, we've lost a little bit of how it functions, and that's unfortunate. And maybe it's just me being older. Maybe this is the new norm.
Well, I agree too, and that's what was special about it. Really, you could talk policy, talk issues, facts, and then still be able to go to an event, a public share the stage with opposite sides of the legislature and give and take. Things like run into each other, and the way that we're able to be even today to this day, and it. I agree with you. I don't know if that's there as much as it used to be.
Depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
I wouldn't take away from
if they have the time.
No, I'm just saying it's different.
Yeah,
I don't want to take away from what they're doing.
No,
because
exactly.
they're not. It's
different time.
They're communicating messages now in a different way.
Different pressures and different.
It is different time. So you and I never served together. You guys, Jack and Joe, served with Shawn in the legislature. You and I never did.
No.
I came along after 2010 as Jody's executive assistant. You were also an executive assistant. We're overlooking this, guys, the importance of executive assistants for ministers. But similar with me working for my brother Jody, you worked for your dad.
Yeah.
In a time when there was almost back when all you had was a rotary dial phone, right? So how did you enjoy working for Alan?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was working on my MBA at the time. So when I got elected, I was actually in the legislature I had my textbooks in 98. I was still working on my MBA at UNB.
You inspired me to do my law degree.
Yeah.
You're much smarter than I am. So but you went through that too. I mean, going back to school is tough enough, but coming back to being an EA, like in Kent County, back in the early 70s, because my dad sat in opposition for 16 years, I think, under the Hatfield administration.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So he would only be home on Saturdays. And I grew up in a household where you would literally see, 40 to 50 people every Saturday morning waiting to see him
at his house.
At his house.
Louis Legier told us the same story about when his father was in cabinet.
So I mean, we grew up with that. We knew, number one, we couldn't let the dog out because you were worried someone was going to hit it with the car or the cat, so keep the pets in because there were just so many people coming in and out. And you knew that, you weren't going to see your father that morning because he was just meeting with constituents. And then, so it came second nature to me. I mean, I knew that, my constituency office, I told every one of our MLAs, when I was elected, and you probably went through the same thing, your constituency office on Monday mornings are critical. You need to be there. Literally, when my dad was there would be 100 people, and we would divvy them up because representing a rural riding, you're the first line of contact for government. So, and unemployment rate was pretty high at that time. People were looking for, help to get 1 or 2, 3 weeks of employment insurance to be able to qualify to get them through the winter.
Get their stamps.
Exactly. So it wasn't an eye-opening experience for me. It was just, Monday morning I'd say, okay, I'm going to hive off. I'll try to see 30. You see 30, and you see 30, and you get, you can only give 2 or 3 minutes per person, and that ties up the morning. But and then you work on following up on it all week. Now, my wife, Roxanne, she's an executive assistant for Minister Miles these days, and it's changed. Not as many people go to the constituency office now, I'm told. Like, it's really changed.
In my last...
you did too, as well then, eh?
Probably almost my full 10 years. The last 5, a lot of people just didn't come to my constituency office. I don't know for whatever reason, but I would get a lot more emails, phone calls, Facebook messages, or see them at breakfast, and that's when they would talk about their issues. But as far as visiting, it was the same.
Wow.
Yeah, they just dropped right off, whereas your office was probably busy. I know when I was Jody's EA, our constituency office was busy in Ormuckdale all the time. Because I actually started as a constituency assistant or a special assistant. I got promoted after good behavior.
You know what? Those are important roles.
Very important.
You all went through. I mean, it allows you to learn how this process works to help people.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So then you got to... Dad goes in government with Frank McKenna, and you become an executive assistant at some point. Exactly. What's your favorite department?
I have
because he had
I was just with him in natural resources.
Okay.
But that's where I learned a lot about the forestry industry at the time. I learned a lot about the fish and wildlife. So that's maybe where I have the passion today to serve in the volunteer sector with Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a real eye opener though, and gives you the great training and experience on how to maneuver departments when you get back in opposition, the machinery government, or who do you contact? How do you write that letter to that?
Your relationships with those deputy ministers are critical.
It counts. I know it does. And it's just a great outlook. But the executive assistants, we can't discount the role of an executive assistant, I guess.
Well, I was speaking to deputies because as an EA at the time, we're talking about the background of public office and being premier, but I remember, Mavis Hurley, who was the deputy minister at Natural Resources, and she was the architect, actually, of extramural health. She was under the Hatfield government, she was the one who put that together. And I remember, hearing stories from her about, how it was then and how it's changed now. And I'm dating myself because I'm probably feeling a little bit older now, how it's changed for me as well. But again, it's a great place to serve here in New Brunswick, and we should never forget how lucky we are today. We're not fighting to keep food on the table like other jurisdictions in the world are. We're not getting bombed. We're not, and sometimes we become kind of complacent on that.
Yeah,
very much.
Yeah, and that's human nature, right? And it's good to have reminders that what our blessings are. What do you have what are you having? I know you're in Horizon. In the Horizon, I know you're your volunteer work, your corporation work and things like that. But in general, what are some goals that you have in the future?
Yeah, well, so for the next 2 years, I'll be president of Ducks Unlimited Canada, and also then chair after that. We ran into some big challenges this year because it took a lot of time and effort, because we receive actually a lot of funding from the U.S. under the North American Fish and Wildlife Agreement that comes up because it was signed under President Bush and Prime Minister Mulroney at the time to create what's called the North American Waterfowl Agreement, so that we put the money on the ground for breeding habitat for waterfowl. They're born here, but then they fly into the United States. Well, the Trump administration came in under Doge and cut off $40 million of our funding. So we were carrying, for the last year, I was carrying a $31 million deficit on the balance sheet that we were trying to deal with and staffing. But we were able to get that fixed with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That took a lot of time. I had to go down to Washington. I had to meet with the House leader. We had to work with the Republicans and the Democrats to get our funding secured again. So that took a lot of time because we have a lot of biologists. We have a lot of contractors.
Yes.
We have a lot, we have a lot of scientists. We are a science-based organization. So that's taking a lot of my time right now over the next 2 years. I'm trying to sell one of my companies. We have a carbon-based company where we take bamboo out of China, we pyrolysize it, we create a charged carbon, and that charged carbon product then replaces peat moss as a growing medium. So we're selling to Saudi Arabia right now because it uses 30% less water in the grow houses for growing lettuce, tomatoes, etc. So I'm trying to sell that company right now to a Florida-based company. So that's taking a lot of my time, but we're getting there. So I'm enjoying the international work. I travel a lot. I'm still involved in the education side in Asia. Artificial intelligence, the AI education platform is exploding. So I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology, but I do, facilitate a little bit on that as well. So it's, my days are full. I love the staff at the Fredericton Airport. I'm between Rexton and Fredericton. I'm blessed because 10-minute drive to the airport in the morning. I know all the team there. They always say hi, whether it's the security people or the Air Canada staff. Zip through, and I'm in Toronto or Montreal, and then I can be in anywhere in the world. That's why I could never live in Toronto, because you fight an hour and a half to get to traffic, to get to the airport. Well, here in Fredericton, you can do it in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No question.
But let me ask you guys a question.
Yes. Go ahead. Terry stole the show last week.
Well, no, this is a simple question.
We got a couple minutes.
What do you miss most of not serving any longer? Because you're still, you're still out in the community. You have successful careers going in real estate.
I get asked it a lot, and for me, it's the connecting the person on the ground in the constituency with the right person in whichever department you need to deal with. Yeah, and whether you remain in the middle of that connection, negotiating or advocating back and forth, or making the connection and just stepping back and circling back with them. But that's what I miss most, is that connection. It's, we can talk about all the chip seal that we were able to deliver and bushes and brush, but it's that person that needed that service, and maybe there's a misunderstanding between them, and somebody needs to find the gray area.
You're the facilitator.
Yeah, the facilitator. Yeah. So that's what I miss, mostly.
And you make a good point.
I know it's a long answer, but
you make a good point, because as realtors and Jode, in law, as primarily a real estate lawyer, we have opportunities all the time to help people and facilitate, and then oftentimes we'll help connect people and facilitate them, through government now. So I still have a lot of that activity as when I was an MLA, but a lot of, for me, is the strategic part of policy. I love being involved with policy and strategy that way, and helping to make a difference on those policy issues, and of course, just the focus of the day, whatever was in the day. So it was either whether it was opposition or in government, but question period, and the heat of the moment, and the strategy, and the urgency, and sometimes the crisis communications management, and just it was just all encompassing. But that would be the things that I miss the most. I already still have opportunities to help people, so I would say that would be. Yeah,
that was exciting. When I first got elected, of course, we were going into opposition. It was after David Allward's first term into opposition, and the advice I got right away was, well, this is probably the best case for you, because then you can figure out how everything's working. You can get your feet under you. And I remember early on. you have your caucus meeting in the morning, and they're like, okay, we've got member statements, and who's going to condolence, and who wants to be on QP, and here's a minister's statement coming. So and I was like, and they're turning to me, and they're like, okay, you can do this, this, and this, and I said, I don't know if I can handle all those things. Yeah. And Fitchie was in the room, and Maddo, of course, and Trevor and Jody, and a lot of they've been around the ledge for a while, and Kirk, and they all turned around and was like, well, there's no better way to start than to just do it.
Baptism by fire.
And I got to a point where you could do 30 minutes of this and 40 minutes of that, or 30 seconds of this, and then some QP stuff. So I enjoyed get my feet wet that way. And really that helped me by the time I got into government, and watching you guys, doing QP over the years, and you learn how to maneuver your way around the legislature floor. So that was fun.
And
there's a lot of strategy to it.
And we've had some great debaters in the legislature. Vaughn Blaney.
Yes.
Kelly Lamrock.
Kelly
could debate with the best of them.
Yeah. Kelly did me a favor one time. I think it was the 2014 election. Mike Pearson was running against me for the Liberal Party in New Maryland, and Kelly was with the NDP then, I guess, probably running downtown. And Info AM, they would have their weekly, bring all the candidates in, and Mike Pearson came in, of course, for Brian Gallant's group, and Kelly came in for the NDP, and who wants to debate Kelly, right?
Right.
And it was not fun for any of the others on there. And I felt at that point in time that was kind of the turning point in my campaign. He gave Mike a pretty hard go. And Mike's pretty sharp. Like, he's very skilled.
Yes, he is.
But man, I think Kelly kind of helped me out there on that one.
Gave you
308 had me losing 2 weeks in, and I pulled it off. So hey. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, we've got to wrap it up, so we want to give you an opportunity, Shawn, just to do some parting words. Anything you'd like to wrap up on?
Well, next Monday is the municipal elections.
Yes.
It's very important you get out and vote for your councillors, your school board officials that are running, and also for your mayors at the local level. And I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here today. It's, as I said, I do these interviews sparingly, so this was fun to reminisce and talk about the good old days. I hope we didn't bore your your viewers today, but it was fun just to get together and talk about how it was and how lucky we are to have what we have here in this province.
Well, we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, we thank you for coming on and doing this, and you're a big part of the reason why we're fortunate as New Brunswickers to have what we have of a lot of those policy decisions that you made and people who you're able to help back when you were the Premier. So thank you for coming on.
Cheers.
All right.
And we want to thank our viewers. Jody says goodbye. He lost connection. He said, make sure you say goodbye for me, and glad to have Shawn on. Always a good friend, he texts. So thanks, Shawn, and thanks for our viewers here on the Carr Brothers Show. And with that, we'll say goodnight.
Yeah. Have a good night. See you next week.